Hi, I'm Chris Sarandon. This is Cooking by Heart, where we revisit the vivid memories of the food we grew up with and the people and the stories attached to that time in our lives. Today, my guest is Michael Rosenbaum. Michael has starred on the screen with Bradley Cooper, Kristen Bell, Charlize Theron, Steve Martin, Clint Eastwood, and many others. He's acted in over 20 feature films, including Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and 3, Urban Legend, and Bringing Down the House, and many more. He's known for portraying what many journalists, fans, and the late Stan Lee believe to be the best Lex Luthor. His epic villain from the hit Superman series Smallville, a role that earned him a Saturn Award. He also has an extensive voiceover career in animation films. Today, Michael enjoys spending time podcasting with his show, Inside of You, where I've been a guest, and playing music. His new band, Sun Spin, is dropping their second album on November 1st, 2022. I'm happy to welcome, as he brandishes Sun Spin on his chest, Michael Rosenbaum. Good to see you, Michael. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you, buddy.
You know, when you by the way, before you get started,
Please.
I look at you and I'm like, I still am stunned. So many people, when they listen to your podcast and saw you, they're like, I mean, how good does he look? You look fantastic. I don't know how you do it. Is it Evian skin cream? What is it?
Well, no. As a matter of fact, I bathe in the blood of, never mind. I have been accused, by the way, of having a portrait of me up in the attic somewhere. You know, the story of Dorian Gray by one of my ex-wives. I won't say which one. But the first thing that we want to deal with today is I talk almost immediately with everybody about provenance, where we're from, because so much of that has to do with the way we grew up, and also the food we eat. So, you started out in where?
Well,
where were you born?
I was born in Oceanside, Long Island, kind of near Amityville, and my mom is kind of out of her mind. She used to take me to see the Amityville house where the Amityville Horror was filmed. In fact, It's on Ocean Avenue, and if you ever go, it's the only house on the street. You'll know which house it is. It's the house that's turned on its side. So the side of the house is facing the street. Those windows, they took out those crazy windows. But she used to always take me to the Amityville house. So at about 8 years old, my dad got a job transfer, and we moved to Indiana. So Jews from New York moving to Midwest Indiana, and thus began
big change.
It was a big change, more for them, but I guess I was still young. I remember it was a transition, but I was young enough to sort of adapt. It was a nice place to grow up. I really enjoyed it. I liked that it was neighborhoods, very calm and quiet. You can cut through backyards and drink out of garden hoses and catch fireflies, and sort of peaceful. You go out and they just come home whenever, and it was nice. Right.
They cut you loose like I did when I was growing up, actually.
Yeah.
You know, Mom said, hey, go. When you hear the whistle, it's dinner time. And she had a referee's whistle. She'd blow it and we'd know to come home. So tell me a little bit about Mom and Dad.
Well, let's use a kind word. I mean, eccentric, out there. My mom, for the most part. My dad was very quiet, introvert, just didn't say much, was not a lot of emotion, not a lot of, I love you, son. You didn't hear that. You didn't hear, I'm proud of you. It was just kind of work, don't show up to work, don't be late. And my mom was sort of all over the place. She taught aerobics and she wrote little articles in her paper. And, I was sort of the kid that just was always tried to get out of the house and make friends. And, I had sort of had, my friends' parents were usually my parents in a lot of ways. I had different friends and their moms and dad would sort of be my mom and dad around the neighborhood. And, it was a fun childhood for the most part. I had a pretty good childhood.
Now, your mom and your dad, I know that at some point they parted ways. But in the beginning, what were your first memories of sitting around the dinner table?
Oh,
was mom a cook?
That's the problem. She really wasn't a cook. Her mother, Ruthie, used to make unbelievable lasagnas, just layered with different cheeses, and just she could make anything. But my mother, she was too busy, so she threw things together.
Yeah.
She would just kind of make a spaghetti and meatballs, and you didn't know exactly where it was coming from. Maybe it was the old ragu, and just dump it in there. But she wasn't a really amazing cook. She made an ambrosia. Don't recall exactly what was in there. Some marshmallows and some fruits. It was
for those of you
horrible.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what ambrosia is, it's as Michael mentions, it's a mixture of fruit, marshmallows, some other unknown items that we may or may not be able to. Even if you saw them, you might not know what they are. But it was a dessert, right?
Yeah, miniature like marshmallows and orange slices, and it was some grapes, and it was just, I don't know. I thought it was something she made up. I didn't actually realize that ambrosia was a real thing.
It was a dish.
I thought she just threw shit together and said, "Eat this." I thought ambrosia was a made up word. Right. I thought it was a band from the 70s who sang how that's how much I feel. You remember that song?
Sure.
And I think that was my mother's MO. She would always throw things together.
Right.
And things, she wasn't a great cook. I used to always look to going to friends' houses to have better meals.
Right.
And
so
to this day,
she didn't have a job, but she was busy all the time because she was a writer as well as what?
She wrote little articles in the paper, like it was called the Newburgh Register, and she would write these little articles, and she would put our names in it sometimes and embarrass us. She'd mention my name, and she taught aerobics class, but I don't think she knew what the hell she was doing. But that was the time in the 80s where everybody was doing aerobics.
Yeah.
So she used to have these women come up in the attic. My dad carpeted the attic, and it felt like there was a thunderstorm going on. Boom, boom, boom. And they're dancing to like Maniac by Michael Cimbello. And I remember as a kid going, "Would you shut up?" And, but she made, I think they would pay her $15 a month. Each woman would pay her $15 a month. And they come every week to have these. All they would do for the most part is sit around and gossip. They'd sit around and gossip. And then they'd do, aerobics for 10, 15 minutes, but mostly it was just talk.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like a perfectly benign way to pass time for $15. What the heck?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Right. I think that's what it was.
Right. So then, Dad was a full-time working man outside the house, and he would come home for dinner?
Yeah, he worked for Bristol Myers Pharmaceuticals, and he was a hard worker. He was very he never missed a day of work. He was always on time. Mm-hmm. And he demanded that from the kids. I mean, we always had to, if we were late, or if he was ready to go, like we're leaving at 10 o'clock in the morning, you better be downstairs and in the car.
Yeah.
I mean, he was strict, and he had a little bit of a temper, but, he mostly worked. He'd get home at like 6 o'clock at night, and maybe I'd have dinner with him for a little while. And that was it. And then I didn't really, see him much. Right. So he was just working a lot. And my mother, she didn't really know how to discipline us. So she used to just tell him, and he'd have to discipline us. So all I really knew from my father is he worked hard and he disciplined us.
Good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. And so it's what it was. And
what was it? You had siblings, right? You had.
Yeah. Well, my mom was married before she married my dad, and she had my older brother and older sister.
Oh, okay.
So they're half brother and sister, and they were from a relationship before, and the guy was sort of abusive, and then they divorced, and then my mom lived with her mother and my 5-year-old half brother and 4-year-old half sister. Then my dad was 18 years old and met my 23-year-old mom with a 5 and a 6 or 7-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Married her, had me a year later. He's this hippie with no money.
Right.
Had a newspaper route. It was just, he was broke. He had one pair of jeans. He smoked pot, and he did the best he could and busted his ass to kind of get, make enough money to get by. Right. So we lived in like duplexes around New York and near the beach, and they were friends with a lot of hippies, and it was kind of crazy. I remember we lived in a place called the Hut. The Hut. They called it the Hut. And it was just a crap. One day while we're sitting around, the whole kitchen sink just collapsed to the ground. And everybody was like, what the? That was sort of like we lived. So, I mean, you learn. It's kind of good. It's humbling. It was a humbling experience. Yeah. I mean, coming from not much and then seeing my dad work hard, working into lower middle class family to a middle class.
Right.
And he started making more money by the time I graduated college and I was on my own.
So going back to the earlier years in the Hut, what was it like around the dinner table with two half siblings and your mom and your dad? What was the conversation like? Was there conversation?
I don't remember there being a lot of conversation. It was mostly my mom telling about her day, what she was doing. And if any of us, and I had a propensity for sort of saying, what the hell are we eating? And my dad saying, show your mother some damn respect. And, they called me, my last name's Rosenbaum. Friends would call me Frozen Rosenbaum because she would make frozen pizzas all the time or frozen foods.
Right.
I wish I had parents like you, Chris. You have a garden. You have nutrients in your meals and they're healthy for the most part, I assume. I didn't have that growing up. I grew up with, just not much. Not much. But when we went out to dinner, that was like a gift.
Well,
from
that's
God.
My next question. What you went out? Where did you go, and what did you have?
There's a Chinese restaurant. I like Chinese. I like going to the Golden Buddha, getting some beef and broccoli. Mm-hmm. The Golden Buddha in Newburgh, Indiana. We go out for pizza at Mazio's Pizza in Newburgh at the time, or Pizza Chef, and get pizzas and a salad. But, it's funny because I feel like getting to know you, I want to start eating better. I want to start, and I think this is the sort of show, you're the sort of the person that is probably a good go-to for me to begin my quest to eat healthier.
Oh, okay. So then what you're essentially saying is that as a result of this podcast, I've got to take over your culinary choices going forward. And we'll discuss this, Michael.
Yeah. Were your parents good cooks? Did they cook for you every night? Fresh vegetables?
Michael, as people who listen to this show know, I grew up in a restaurant. My dad owned a restaurant in a small coal mining town in West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia. And so on alternate weeks, I would eat dinner at the restaurant when my dad was working the evening shifts with my mom, and I could have whatever I wanted. So basically, if I wanted a steak or if I wanted, whatever was on the menu, I could have, including these amazing desserts that were made fresh every day by the cook. It was not a gourmet restaurant by any stretch of the imagination. It was kind of a cross between a diner and a restaurant. There were short orders, but there was also fresh-made pies, cakes, cobblers, and then fresh-made entrees at lunch, and then dinner was mostly, meat and potatoes, but it was really good meat. My dad butchered everything. And then at home, when my mom cooked, she was taught by my father how to cook, interestingly, and it was all Greek. The diet was basically almost all completely, Greek-style cooking, be it, even if we had chicken, it was Greek-style roasted chicken with oregano and lemon and roasted potatoes in the Greek style. And always a salad. My dad had a glass of wine. It was very European in a way. But it was, generally speaking, fresh food all the time. Not farm to table by any stretch of the imagination, but it was fresh. Yeah, and so I carried that on as I got older. I cooked for myself because I watched my mom cook, and we had to help. Did you help in the kitchen after or before at any time?
No, I think we did dishes, but that was it.
Yeah.
But we didn't really contribute to the food making. I like I said, I mean, and as I'm listening to what you're saying, I'm so envious of that because as my family knows, my brothers and sisters,
yeah.
We didn't get that. We didn't have healthy foods.
Right.
For years and years, we ate kind of whatever she put together, whatever she threw together.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad somehow was very nice about it. It was like, great. He would never make fun of her food. And we were sitting there going, how do you eat this? How are you doing this?
Oh, wow.
We were always really skinny kids growing up, my brother and I. And I think my mom had a lot to do with that. I think her cooking had a lot to do with that.
Was there any sort of dropping food off the side of the table for the dog or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, I would do that occasionally for sure. Yeah. And I'm sure the dog probably didn't eat it too sometimes.
He had discriminating taste, did he?
Yes. The dog, funny enough, the dog's name was Cujo.
Ooh.
It was a little poodle named Cujo. This ferocious dog man.
Right. But he was a diminutive Cujo.
Yes, right. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you mentioned conversations at the table were fairly brief and kind of mundane.
Yeah, I would think so. I think it was mostly about my Mother's Day, my father. Didn't really ask how were you doing in school. It was sort of like we weren't there for the most part. Sounds kind of sad, but
no.
And in Indiana, there wasn't a lot to choose from to go out to dinner.
Right.
Like we said, there was a Chinese restaurant. I think there were a lot of pizza places. It was the Midwest.
Yeah.
A lot of fast food. To this day, if you go there, there's a strip on 66. I think it's on 66 or 261 that are just every fast food restaurant you can imagine.
Right.
And, that gets addictive. I mean, you know, when you're a kid or, you grow up there, it's like you see fast food, it's a quick grab. Just get it. And that sort of becomes habit. It's habitual. Eating well is habitual. I think that I never had a habit of eating well because there wasn't a lot of choices around me.
And also, the way those takeout foods are formulated, they're formulated for you for them to bring pleasure to those centers in the brain that love fat and sugar, essentially, because those foods are highly flavored. They do, excite the taste centers of the brain and also whatever else is going on in your body.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And even today, it's like I keep saying I'm going to get, I need to start a diet that's healthy, because it's absolutely true. The inflammation, certain foods
couldn't be closer to the truth. Absolutely.
And allergies. Yeah. Like my allergies, I have congestion. I don't eat as well as I should. I get into some routines or some habits where, for a couple of weeks, I'll eat healthy. And then all of a sudden I'm in the mood for a soda. And then I want a chicken sandwich from freaking Chick-fil-A. I am single. So maybe, having a partner and working together to eat healthy would be sort of more of a fun thing to do and a healthy thing to do. But so far I think that it's easy for me to sort of fall off the wagon and go grab something that's quick. Mm-hmm. I try not to eat fast food, but ordering in a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do order in a lot. And I think that I really should learn how to cook more. I mean, I could cook a steak. I could cook some pasta. I could cook tacos. But I think it might be a fun thing for me to sort of dive into and experience and start making things that will add to my well-being as opposed to things that contribute to health risks and things.
Well, there are a lot of great healthy cookbooks out there, and all you have to do is read a recipe. If you can follow a recipe, you can cook. You can do it. I'm telling you.
They're not that hard.
No, not really. And after a while, you develop a kind of, it's interesting because I have 3 kids. They're all grown, and they all cook. My son's a trained chef, but my 2 daughters are great cooks. And they have, over the years, and they have their own way of doing it. It's not just the way they learned when they were growing up around me and their mom. They also have expanded their horizons in terms of food and cooking. And it's a world that is easily accessible and also is rewarding, because you get the rewards when you sit down to the table. And it's something that you can share with other people. It's something that creates community as well. So,
is there a black sheep in your family? Is there someone who doesn't follow the traditions of cooking, and or is everyone pretty good at that?
My brother, before he passed away, he had 400 cookbooks, and he cooked everything. He loved to cook. He was a pretty amazing chef, and he had major digestive problems. So his cooking was kind of curtailed. I mean, his consumption was curtailed by that, but it didn't stop him from at least experiment. He loved to experiment and try things. He later in his life, he discovered Spam. Do you know what Spam is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very much a wartime thing. Came out of the.
I never have. I think I might have. Isn't it kind of mushy?
Yeah, I mean it's a canned kind of composite meat product. But he would make it with different things, and he would fry it, and he would broil it, and he would use different. It was really quite extraordinary, considered that he was a gourmet cook. At the same time, he had a very wide palette of things that he was willing to try in his life. I admired him greatly for that, and I miss him terribly. At any rate, let's get back to, so going out, you guys went out, you'd have pizza, you'd have Chinese food, was there a time that you remember when you were young, when your taste buds were awakened, where you just went, oh my God, I've been missing this all my life. Where did it come from? Did you have a moment like that? Was it when you were younger? Was it when you were in college, maybe? Do you recall anything like that?
I think maybe not college as much as, there were certain moments, like if you went to a bar mitzvah or you went to someone's wedding, and you're like, oh, wow, this is a 3-course meal.
Mm-hmm.
There's salad, and there's vegetables, and there's, it was a surprise. It was like, what is this? And it was kind of like, you're so used to bad that it took you a minute to go, what? And then you realize, hey, this is actually pretty good. And it wasn't until later, when you start getting older, people start to tell you, this other stuff is going to kill you. You realize that.
Right.
Because when you're young, no one tells you that. You just say, yeah, get a McDonald's. Get him this, get him that. At least that's what we lived, that sort of environment.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till later. I mean, look, when you're starving artists, it's like you're not going to make gourmet meals. You're not going to, you could, I guess, if you grew up with it. But, even in college and after college, going and doing off-Broadway and living in New York, it was still mostly ramen noodles or,
what you could afford.
What I could afford.
Yeah.
And then I remember my friend got a job as a waiter in this Italian restaurant. I think it was mafia owned because there was never anyone there, and it always would stick around. They didn't care.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you lower your voice when you say this too, because you want to make sure that nobody's.
And I remember the manager, the guy who owned it, I forgot his name, but he was very nice, very classy guy.
Yeah,
talk like little mom.
Yeah,
he'd say, Matt, to my friend Matt. He goes, Matt, get your friend something nice to eat. And so he's like, what would you like? And I go, I don't know. And then they would bring me out these dishes, these pasta dishes and beautiful salads. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Actually going to a restaurant where it's fresh food. And so slowly I started realizing that there's more to offer out there when you're kind of in this microcosm or whatever you call it, this little Newburgh, Indiana. There's not a lot of choices. Mm-hmm. And even when you go to college, again, you don't have any money. There's not a lot of choices.
And also,
I didn't go home very often.
Yeah. And also in college, you've got a pretty much prescribed kind of way of eating. You're either eating in a dorm or you're eating in a cafeteria or.
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly right. So it wasn't until I started Yeah, I mean, really wasn't until I guess I moved to LA and I started eating sushi. Discovered sushi, and I was like, "Oh, this is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
This is fish and rice. This is better." And occasionally, I would date someone, and I'd date them a couple years, and they would force me to put some meals together. And I actually recall really liking it. I like having that sort of feel of like, oh, we're making something together. It's healthy. It's not just getting a quick fix. There's something really nice about that. So it's definitely something, look, I'm 50 years old now, and I haven't been eating great for quite a long time. I've definitely been eating better in the last 15, 20 years than I was previously. But I still think, look, it's never too late. And, I want to experience it more. I think that was one of the things when you said, hey, come on this show. And I'm like, I don't know anything about cooking. I don't know anything about, my mom didn't cook. I'd be a terrible guest. But really, it's a good thing to learn, and to having a friend like you to sort of change my habits and
expand your
to a different world,
and also expand your horizons, and expand your expand not only your food choices but also your community in a way.
Yeah,
it'll force you to do that. You have friends over and say, okay, tonight I'm going to try something. Tonight I'm going to look in this book. This looks great. I'm going to try this tonight. Why not?
I think that's a good idea. It's probably cost effective too. You're probably going to save money, a lot of money, because I order out constantly.
And
and when I think I'm ordering, I'm like, hey, I'm ordering let me ask you, ordering Chinese is probably a lot of salt, right?
Yes. Salt, often sugar, particularly in Cantonese, Mandarin food, but depending.
Yeah. See, I always look at it as, it's rice and meat and broccoli. How could that be bad for you?
Well,
but it probably is, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you got to be careful about your meat and how it's cooked, and also not eating it too often because it's artery clogging. I have a history of high family cholesterol, so I watch. I'm on I live on the Mediterranean diet. Lots of olive oil. I don't use any other kind of fat. I don't use butter much. Sometimes I'll use butter, but basically it's olive oil is my go-to cooking oil, salad oil, and fish, lean meat every once in a while, lots of chicken, lots of fish, and lots of fresh vegetables.
Yeah,
and
my dad
and high fiber grains. Not white rice, but brown rice. Staying away from regular potatoes if you can. Eat sweet potatoes. Purple potatoes are great. They're much healthier for you.
Can I just move in with you? You and your wife. I'll do whatever. I'll clean the garden, whatever you do.
Okay.
I'll fix things. I'll prune things.
All right. You got to move. But now you live in the center of healthy food access.
It's true.
You live in a place that's much better. It's much easier to find. I have to, I'm great in the summertime with my garden and my fresh vegetables, but in the wintertime, I have to depend on stores that have, fresh food. And they are places like, I'm not going to name particular stores, but there are, actually a lot of the major supermarkets now have organic produce sections. So it doesn't have to be a place like Whole Foods or, any place that just specializes in it. So you can get.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. Is because you'll know the answer to this. Is eating vegan a way healthier choice, or being vegetarian? What is the best sort of diet to have, in your opinion?
But in my opinion, it's the diet that I follow, the Mediterranean diet, which is much more sort of has a broader spectrum of food choices. But veganism is healthy. I know a number of people that I'm personally friendly and whom I know who are vegans, who are very healthy people. People who are vegetarians. My stepson and his wife have become pescatarians. They only eat fish. They're not eating chicken and meat anymore. And they feel
How do they feel?
They feel
How
great.
do they feel?
They feel great. Yeah. They enjoy it very much. Yeah. But
what about, don't you have to worry about the mercury stuff with the fish?
Depends. If it's line caught, I think it's probably better. The answer to that one is I'm not an expert on it, so I can't give you a definitive answer. But there are places that you can go and look and find out very easily. All you got to do is, we live now in the age of just pick up your phone and you have an encyclopedia. So go to the encyclopedia of your phone and just ask it, hey, whatever. Hey, Alexa, hey, Siri, what fish is safe to eat? And I'm sure you'll be able to find out. But I want to get back to you and your progress.
I'm learning, though.
Yes, well,
Chris, I'm learning.
I get it.
I'm learning from you. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so now so we've sort of moved out of your childhood. And we've moved into your college years. You started because I want to find out. I'm curious also about how you ended up doing what you do now, how you ended up being Lex Luthor, how you ended up working with all these wonderful people. Where did this come from?
Well, it really. I've told the story, but I didn't fit in at all in high school. I just did not fit in. I would hang out with some of the stoners and hang out with some of the goth people and the theater people and I knew a popular guy but I didn't really fit in anywhere. I was the shortest kid in my high school.
Really?
Yes, and I just felt like I didn't belong. I just something to this day in a lot of ways. There's still that kid that feels like he doesn't quite belong.
Right.
I don't feel that comfortable when I'm around big celebrities. And I can fake it. I can fake the hell out of it. And you think I'm the most confident guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, I don't feel that comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But I was taking a drama class, and it was an easy A. And then my senior year, my Miss Paternoster.
This is college, right?
No, this was high school.
This is
the end of high school.
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Paternoster, who then became Miss Johnson, who I believe became Miss... Well, whatever. She told me I cannot take senior drama unless I audition for a play. And I said, shit. And I said, okay. And so there was this play, Grease, like every actor's done it. And there's this part of Vince Fontaine, the crazy DJ. Mm-hmm. And I went in and I read for it and I got it. And I was like, oh shit, now I have to do it. And I remember being so nervous, and to the point where there's a radio booth and I'm supposed to play this DJ.
Yeah.
And I up on the top of the stage. And I remember just like you couldn't see me. I didn't want to be seen. And the director said, Michael, we can't see you. We have to see your face. And then I started getting, I guess I got a little more confident. And I noticed, I still have it. I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember the applause when my character came out at the end of the show. I got all these laughs, but the applause was just like, I was like, oh my God, This is for me? Mm-hmm. It was louder than everybody else's. It was really thunderous. Yeah. And I was just, I knew that I was doing something right. And I remember walking down the hallway the next day at school, and this popular kid who never, ever talked to me just goes, hey, you were funny in that play last night. And then he walked away. And I go, so not being me is the way to go.
Yeah.
So from that moment on, I said, this has got to be the right thing for me because I'm not popular. People aren't paying attention to me. But when I do this, they pay attention to me. Mm-hmm. And I went to college and I started taking acting classes and I started doing plays, and I noticed that people were paying a little more attention to me. I had found something that I belonged with this group. Mm-hmm. I belonged in this environment. And, from then on, I started getting lead roles. My teachers were like, I go, hey, should I go to grad school? They're like, I think you're ready. You should go to New York and give this a shot.
Really? So this was at Western Kentucky? Is that where you went to school?
Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
And, it was like little moments that gave me the confidence. In your lifetime, there's a few people along the way that hopefully everyone has.
Yeah.
That just has a belief in you.
Yep.
Because a lot of times you don't believe in yourself if no one else believes in you. And that causes a lot of times for you to not become who you're destined to become because you didn't have the confidence and nobody helped you with that.
Yeah.
So along the way, there was maybe a teacher in high school. Maybe there was a guy who came. Maybe you know this guy. He did Broadway. Have you ever heard of Leo Burmester?
Name's familiar.
He did some Broadway, Les Miserables. He was one of the original cast, and he did some movies like The Abyss. Mm-hmm. And he was invited, because he went to Western Kentucky, he was invited to the college to speak. And we were going to, the graduating class was going to give monologues. And I remember he was going to review them and talk to each actor. And I remember they said, just graduating seniors. And I was a junior, and I went to the head of the department, and I go, hey, I paid money to go to this school. I want to give a monologue to this guy. And in my mind, I said to myself, you are going to do a monologue. He's going to recognize me. He's going to see my talent. And I'm going to take off from there. I swear to God, this is the mindset. Mm-hmm. My teacher says, Michael, go ahead. You can give a monologue. And I gave a monologue. Everybody started giving monologues. He would go up to them and say, great, blah, blah, blah. They'd sit down. I went up there. I gave a monologue.
Do you remember what it was?
Boy's Life?
Mm.
Boy's Life?
Yeah, that's a fairly popular and famous one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I gave the monologue, and he came up to me and he goes, I want you to try it this way. Mm. And I go, okay. And I did it. And he goes, hang on, come here. And now people are getting a little restless. Mm-hmm. Like, why is he getting to do it again? Right. Let's do it this time. I did it 4 or 5 times, and by the end, I was in tears with the direction he gave me. That I was crying in this scene that I was sort of laughing at first. And the bell rang, and everybody got up and left. And Leo turned to me, and he says, you've got it. You've got this. Don't ever stop doing this. Don't ever stop trying, because there's something inside of you that I see. Yeah. And the head of the department called me in and goes, I don't understand. You party all the time. You don't take this seriously, Dr. Combs would say. Yes. But Leo Burmester was fond of you. And he says, you're the one that's going to make it. And Leo called me from New York and said, hey, why don't you come meet my agent? I'm in college. Flew up, met his agent. I wasn't ready yet. I wanted to graduate college. Mm-hmm. But it made me feel like I do have what I thought I had. And from there on, I started, I moved to New York with nothing. I lived with 2 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. Then 3 people in the same 1-bedroom apartment. I rollerbladed to do telemarketing. I did off-Broadway at the Grove Street Playhouse. Mm-hmm. And things started to happen. And, they say luck's a commodity of preparation and opportunity. I called Dr. Combs back at college, and he goes, how's it going? And I said, I don't know. I'm not getting any breaks, really. It's been like 8 months, a year. I'm not really getting any connections. I'm barely making enough money to get by, paying my dues.
That's right. The actor's story.
And he said, I'd like you to call Dylan and Becky Baker. You know them?
No. I know Dylan. I know Bill. I know Dylan. Just
Dylan.
Yeah.
Done a ton of work. Both of them have done great actors.
Yeah. Dylan's a great character actor. Wonderful.
Yes. Yep. Murder in the First or something. Whatever. He's done tons of stuff. Yep. They go, call them. And I called them. And I said, hey, it's Michael Rosenbaum. Why don't you come over for some ramen noodles? And I hung up. The next day, she's like, oh my God, you're so funny. Dylan and I want you to have dinner at our house. And I remember, again, they made me this really nice meal. We had a salad to start our meal, a little fruit. Then we had some, I don't remember what else we had, but it was a nice meal. It was one of those few moments of my life that I was having good food, Chris. Yep. And this was a marvelous night. He showed me some pictures of him with John Candy and Steve Martin from this movie they did together, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I went home. And 3 days later in my apartment, I go, you know what? I'm going to call them and just say thanks. Just because I'm going to follow up.
Yeah.
And I called. And Becky says, hey, Michael, hey, can you hold on a second? I go, sure. She clicks back about 2 minutes later and goes, listen, I was just on the phone with my agent and I mentioned you and they want to see you tomorrow. It was just a lucky moment.
Yep.
And the next day I went in and it was for the commercial agent. And they said, do you know what you do voiceovers? And I said, hell yeah. I'd never done a voiceover.
Right.
And I remembered acting for the camera class I took in college. And I remembered it verbatim. And I started, if you like yummy things like peach parfait, come on, live a little, have a cup of U-Ban for dessert. U-Ban, the gorgeous coffee. Just think, bacon and eggs for breakfast and dessert. A nice sandwich for lunch and dessert. Or how about strawberry? I went on.
You remember
and they
the whole
were laughing.
thing. Right.
I still to this day do.
Mm-hmm.
And they called the other agents and they laughed and they started sending me out. And this helped me. It just was a sort of a chain reaction.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing with me is I remember, again, I miss it. I don't know what it is, and maybe you could relate, but I just remember having this confidence that I was going to make it. There was no statistic.
Yes.
No actors don't survive.
Yes.
It didn't matter. I was different in my head. And I wish I had that same kind of drive and that same kind of confidence, because I think as you get older, you sort of lose that tenacity, that drive. Do you not?
Well, it's not knowing that you don't know anything. You know, not being aware that you are an empty vessel in a way. And as the vessel fills up, you start listening to some of those voices. We call it the spoiler in my family, of the spoiler going, no, you can't do that. But when you're younger, you don't have a spoiler, or often you don't. Or if you had a spoiler, you figured out a way to sublimate it, to put it to the side, because I'm young. I can do anything. Why not? But as you get older, you start, you know, and the world has something to do with that as well, I think. You know,
I think so too. I think you surround yourself sometimes as you come into Hollywood or in the New York scene, you have people that are jaded and people that are starting this sort of attitude, cynical and negative, and it can rub off on you, and you can start to believe those things, and it could change your perspective. And I think that's ultimately what can happen, what does happen.
And also the rejections accumulate over time, because as I tell the story all the time. I've never told it to you, and maybe the folks who are listening remember my telling it in another podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that is that at one point when I was sort of mid-career and was doing okay, my 5-year-old daughter was sitting with another 5-year-old and their mom, and they were sitting around talking. They were having pizza or ice cream or something, and they were talking about what their daddies did. And the woman turned to her own daughter and she said, you know what daddy does, don't you? And she said, yeah, he makes wires in houses. And then she said, that's right, daddy's an electrician. And she turned to my daughter and she said, you know what your daddy does, don't you? And she says, yeah, he looks for work.
It's so true.
Because that's what we do as actors.
He looks for work.
He looks for work. And the fact is that one of the, I think, distinguishing characteristics of people who have a career in this business is that they are able to, after, like a good baseball player, a hitter. We all know, anybody out there who's a baseball fan knows that a good hitter hits over 300. That means that he strikes out or doesn't get a hit 70% of the time. Okay? Well, this is the same with actors. And you have to have a mindset that every time I go up to the plate, I'm going to get a hit. Every time I go into an audition, I'm going to get this. And if you don't, then you have to somehow gather yourself for the next one and the next one. And I guess it's a long way of saying that over the years, those rejections, because rejection is so much a part of what we do, that they accumulate over time.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. And they become a kind of plaque in our artery of creativity.
It was weird, you know, growing up and the sort of the life I had and my surroundings. I always had this weird feeling that I wasn't going to live past high school, or I wasn't going to live past my 20s, or I just always felt that way. And living in a small town, I think there was 3,000 people in Newburgh, Indiana. And, to get out of this town was not going to be easy. And I never thought I would. But sort of a chain reaction of things that sort of happened. I got lucky. I remember the reason I went to college is because the popular kid down the street, he was popular, but he always came over the house. Maybe because my parents had a pool. It wasn't a great pool, but or I had Atari or whatever, yeah. And he would come over to play it. But he goes, "Hey, are you going to Western? You should go to Western Kentucky. We'll be roommates." I swear to God, the only reason I went to college
was because
this popular kid,
yeah,
was like, "Let's go to college and I'll be a roommate."
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I went to college, and then everything else happened.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it tells you somebody who believes in you. But I never thought I'd make it. So even when it's funny, when I got my first TV show, it was the worst TV show in the history of TV shows. It was the Tom Arnold Show. It was called The Tom Show, ranked 132 out of 131 shows. It was not a great show. Right. Ed McMahon, meat. But I thought I made it. I got a TV show. I am rich. Little did I know, it was all of a sudden it dawns on you that you're making, $7,500 a week before taxes and agents and all. And no one's watching the show and no one cares. And you're like, wait a minute, but I'm on a TV. No one cares. And you're like, well, but I'm a star, right?
Yeah.
You're not a star. You're on a shitty show that no one cares about.
Yeah.
So it's this perception that I have to get on a better show. I have to get on a better project. I have to get better.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's always chasing that dream. It's like, my friend said it best. His movie bombed. He's a director, a writer, an actor. I won't say his name, but his movie bombed. And the critics hated it. And I said to him, "How you feeling?" He goes, my perspective is, if you told little me when I was 12 years old, you're going to direct a movie in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You're going to be the lead actor in Hollywood in a movie. He wouldn't think of money. He wouldn't think of reviews.
No. He
would just think, "Oh my gosh, how great is that?" And the kid in us, I think we lose that a lot of times.
Yes.
And the things we're doing, they are cool. They are great.
Yep.
Just because someone else doesn't think, you got to keep those, that kid alive, that spirit alive. And that's where, because some people, they lose their love for what they do, their passion.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly. That does happen.
That leads into a question that I have about, because one of the things that I read in your bio when I read it out, and introduced you, was that you worked with some extraordinary people. Now, is there anyone or any of the group of that group of people, or any group of people that you work with, where you can say, you know what? That's a great example of what I want to attain, not just from the standpoint of artistry, but also from the standpoint of perspective and attitude about what we do.
The first thing I think of is Keanu Reeves. I did a movie called Sweet November. I played a transvestite that lives next to, who's friends with Charlize Theron.
Ooh, we have that in common. We've both played people who are transvestites. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead. 6 degrees of separation, only one now.
Yeah. So it wasn't about, I looked at him and said, I want his success. I want his career. They say when they meet, never meet your heroes because they'll let you down sometimes.
Yep.
I met Keanu and I thought, what a beautiful human being.
Yeah.
He was so nice to me and so pleasant, and came up to me every morning and goes, "Michael, how's your morning?" And we would have these conversations. I go, "Keanu." And I would be I'd be in drag. I go, "Can I call you Keanu?" And he'd go, "Well, you can call me anything you like." And we just had such a wonderful time and camaraderie. And I thought, look at this guy with the biggest success story, who has millions of dollars and is just a good man.
Yeah.
And you hear these stories about him just going up to someone who needs a hug or and these tragedies that happen where his girlfriend dies. And he is just a great person. And I think my goals have changed. I think when I was younger, I want to be a star. I want to be famous. Mm-hmm. I want to be known. I want to make it. This.
Yeah.
Yes. And something shifted. Maybe it's maybe a moment with Keanu, maybe the podcast that I'm doing now, which really affects a lot of people and helps them with their lives. We talk about celebrities with anxiety, depression, all these things. Sure. I talk to you about it. And my perception has changed that, it's not what you're doing as an actor or what project you're doing or how much money you're making or how many people know you. It's what you do behind the camera when no one's watching. It's the nice humanitarian sort of like things that we can do that can mean so much to someone's life. And that is truly what I'm aspiring to be more like, is someone who can change someone's life, who can help them, who can, and it makes me happier. It's weird, but when you do for others,
absolutely, when
you feel better. And I'm not a gift from God here. I think we all are, but I am really trying to be that person. Have I completed my tasks? No, I have a long way to go. But when I do those things, when I become friends with a kid from the Ronald McDonald House, and I become friends with him and his family as he's going through terminal cancer, and it becomes like a brother, and I realize I'm not only helping him or his family, maybe, but I'm surprised by how much it helps me, how much it makes me feel more human, and how much it makes me want to help more. And so that is a long answer, but I think that my whole perception, my perspective, everything's sort of shifted into, look, there's part of you that's still, hey, it's nice when you're noticed. Or, oh, you're great Lex Luthor, or you were the Flash, or you were this. That's awesome. But also when people come up to and say, you have no idea how much your podcast helps me. I have horrible anxiety attacks. I have horrible whatever it is. And I'm like, that means so much more to me that I'm helping someone as opposed to like, oh, I played this guy. So it's pretty cool.
That you're in service to something. That's bigger than yourself.
I feel like I'm growing up finally. I think I was Peter Pan syndrome. My mom had it. She still does. She's like a 75-year-old, 13-year-old. I'm sort of this 50-year-old that's starting to, just see what life has to offer. It really has to offer, not just the things that seem shallow or not important, but the other things that are, because people, what you have, somebody said, is all you have when you die are your memories. You have your memories, and were you a good person? And when I die, when I go, I want to hopefully before I go say, hey, you were a good dude. You were a good human being. Yeah,
and you affected the world and some of its people in a positive way.
Yeah. I think that's really important. It's taken me a long time, and probably take me longer to figure it out.
It never
completely.
Ends. It never ends.
Never ends.
Yeah. It shouldn't.
Yeah.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
That's the important thing, and that is that we remain curious and we remain open to possibilities, and that includes other people. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, is because my early life was about food, and I know that I have connected in many ways with people in my adult life through food, and I am hoping that it will continue to provide a picture to people of ways of creating community and family. That's not necessarily literal family, but that is more sort of figurative, big picture family. Getting back to that idea, I want to know if there was one memory that you have, be it the smell of something coming from the kitchen, when you walked in the house, or the smell of something that you, or the taste of something that you ate when you were out somewhere that is vivid, still vivid to you today, that brings back a memory of that time in your life?
Well, recently, it's funny because I won't remember exactly what I was eating, but the Michelin, what is it? What's the highest star?
Yep.
Is it a 3-star or 5-star? What's the highest?
I'm not
Michelin
sure what the highest Michelin is, but it's up there.
There's only 11, I think, in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, all those movies.
Mm-hmm.
One of my best friends, he treated all his friends to a Michelin 3-5, the whatever the highest is.
Yeah.
I had never been to anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been to. And I couldn't believe the tastes and the flavors and the things that I was experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly what they were called.
Where was the restaurant?
It was in Northern California.
Yeah.
It was in. Yeah, it was one of the most extraordinary restaurants, and
The French Laundry?
maybe
Probably one of the most
Hold on.
famous restaurants in the country, at least out there.
it's called Single Thread.
Single Thread. Okay.
I mean, other than that, having a couple of nice meals at restaurants.
But what about
I've
when you
never
were a
been-
kid?
I remember
Anything?
going to my grandmother's house. My grandma Blanche.
Yep.
She was. I didn't experience this with my mother.
Right.
But you'd start out with half a grapefruit, and you'd have a little bit of grapefruit, and then you'd have a nice salad with your meal. And then she'd bring out veal parmesan, or she'd bring out her pasta dishes, or eggplant, or I just remember thinking, this is what eating is like. This is what eating should be.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't rush through your meals.
Yeah.
You shouldn't just eat because you're hungry, unless you have to.
Yeah.
You're at the airplane. You need to grab food.
Yeah.
But when you have the chance to sit down and have a nice meal with someone and talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
I just never experienced that. I never experienced saying, "This is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
This is an event." I think my mother was a little envious of that. I think, I was like, why can't you cook like this?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that was sort of it. Both grandparents grew up where all the families ate together.
Yeah.
The family always ate together.
Yep.
And my grandmothers would always cook.
And this was Ruthie, as well as
Ruthie, yes, who passed away years ago, and Blanche, who's still alive, is 94,
Oh, wow.
just moved into assisted living, still has her memory, who's amazing. And it's moments like that you're just like, you start to realize that there's much more out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different things out there that you haven't even experienced. I haven't experienced so much, and I'm 50, and I think I'm not knocking it, but I think I have a lot of great friends who like to eat pizza, like to eat this.
Mm-hmm.
And no one really likes to sit down and make a meal. And after listening to your podcast, after talking to you, it makes me want to start having dinner nights where every week, once a week,
that's my challenge.
Someone comes, and it's a challenge.
I'm going to challenge you to do that.
Yeah, at least once every other week.
And I'm going to ask you to report back to me of how it turned
because
out.
I need to start experiencing more. I think I woke up in terms of the whole fame thing and wanting this and that, and then all of a sudden, wow, doing something meaningful for someone else, learning that. I think the same thing with me for food. Not only that, but I have a lot of allergies. I have a lot of food allergies, and I don't avoid them. The foods that I should avoid.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes go, you know what? I'm just going to eat it anyway, and I suffer from it and all the inflammations. And it's amazing when you can eat healthy, and there's so many good foods that are out there, that you're only helping yourself. Like, I know that my congestion and my inflammation, they'll all probably cease when I start to eat right and eat better meals. There's just no doubt about it. So this is a good reason for me to change.
All right.
I'm not even kidding.
Okay. No. I'm going to hold you to it. Michael Rosenbaum, thank you, my friend. You are a delightful guest, and I can't thank you enough. It's been because always in these conversations, things are revealed to me, and that's why I call this podcast Cooking by Heart, because it comes from here in me to there in you. Your heart to mine.
I love this. I love talking to you. I hope we'll remain friends for a long, long time. I think you're a special human being. And I'm going to come visit you sometime and have a meal at your house.
It's a deal, dude. It's a deal.
I would love that.
Okay. Love you, Michael. Take care. All right. Thank you. Michael Rosenbaum, ladies and gentlemen. Thank him very much. What a great, great, great day today.